Good evening, ladies. Welcome to another amazing Menopause Mixer. I'm your host, Delayna Watkins. And of course, I am bringing you another amazing, fabulous, beautiful, special guest. Tonight, we have Kim Hynes, who is with Kim Hynes Health all over social media. Don't believe me that she's great? Go and follow her right now as I introduce her. She is coming to us tonight because I had that beautiful topic that I know you all saw that was savoring midlife. Don't you like how I just blended that whole savoring midlife with what we're going to talk about tonight? It's going to be about healthy eating through menopause. So, you guys know we talk about hormones and, how we have to eat for our hormones and our health and well-being. Well, guess what? Kim is the queen of that, and she's going to bring us some amazing tips, share some success stories, give us all the goodness that we need. So first, while you're going to look her up, because I know that all of my followers, my listeners, that's what you do, right? Is while I'm introducing, you go and you follow the amazing people that we have on the Menopause Mixer. So let me just introduce Kim to you. First of all, as I said, she is a seasoned nutritional health coach. She graduated from the Institute of Integrative Health, known as IIN, and she helps people of all ages lose weight. And here's my key word, sustainably. I'm going to say that again. She helps people of all ages lose weight sustainably. Y'all know it's all about the sustainability. It's one thing to lose weight, it's another thing to have it be sustainable and to be able to maintain it. She helps them find peace with food and their bodies and overall improve their health and lives. So, no more about all that. Now, let me introduce you to her and bring her full screen. Miss Kim Hynes. Show me some reactions, ladies. Make sure that you do hand claps, emojis,
Hello.
yes, and welcome. So, once again, look at how beautiful she is. Thank you so much for joining me this evening, Kim.
Thank you, Delayna. I'm so honored to be here. And of course, menopause is my favorite subject.
Yes, yes. It has become mine. It wasn't. It was one of those things where it was just sort of, in the back of your mind, as you're doing life. And
Yes,
then when it happens to you, it becomes part of who you are, especially when you're in the health and wellness arena. So it kind of now is just, yes, at the forefront. Now I find myself talking to women about it at the checkout.
exactly. And it's amazing you said that because people are willing to talk out loud about it now.
Finally, yeah. And it took quite a bit to get here, but we're here, which is good. And I always make this joke and say the only thing that I remember, and my mom was a nurse too, and we never talked about menopause. The only thing I remember was just the good old, that was it. That was my course in menopause. It was just seeing the fan going or the arm going or the plate or whatever she could grab to make herself cool off. I just knew that something was happening, had no idea what. But we're here to change the narrative and talk about the things that either make menopause a very freeing and, as I call it, the feminine evolution, the third age. Some of my guests have come up with some great names. Whatever we decide to call this period in our lives, we're here to talk about it. So, again, thank you so much. So, again, ladies, welcome, welcome, welcome. Drop your comments in the chat. If you have questions, drop them in the chat, comment on the chat box, and I will make sure that we get to them. So, again, welcome to tonight's episode. So, I want to start off first, and I told you this earlier when we were sitting back in the green room. For some reason, it's always about hormones, or it's about, eating for your hormones. But let's start off with one of our first questions is the importance of hormones and the foods that we eat. What role does that play during midlife?
Absolutely. One of the biggest symptoms of going through midlife and menopause is insulin resistance, for example. And we have 50 hormones in our body, and we only talk about five of them: estrogen,
Mhm.
progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, insulin. But they're really important at this time. And then there's, obviously thyroid, hunger hormones, all the other hormones. But insulin resistance is important to understand because when we get older, it's not just about becoming diabetic, which we know is drastic. When we become diabetic, we have chronic inflammation, chronic illness that can happen, and so many things break down in our bodies. But the other part of insulin resistance is the weight gain. And we all know that that's the part we don't love, that when we're eating food, it's not like when we're in our 20s and 30s where everything just goes in, everything's fine, we can burn it off. Now, as we're eating this food, if the sugars are not having any place to go, then we're not eating properly, then they get stored as fat. And the other issue is just highs and lows in the blood sugar. If you're already having hot flashes and you're already having uncomfortable symptoms, and you're not feeling comfortable maybe with anxiety and mental health too, then you're having these blood sugar changes that are making everything even more challenging. So when we eat, instead of talking about very specific food, I talk about a balanced plate that will really help us stay stable. So, for example, when we're eating processed food and sugar, we know that that's going to rise very quickly. Our blood sugar is just going to kind of take off. When we're having things like the protein and then the fiber, and there's other reasons why we want that in there too, but the protein and the fiber in that balanced plate, and of course, we do get to have carbs. And there's a reason why we need to have those too, for our brain and for kind of bringing down our cortisol and raising up that serotonin. But the balanced plate of the protein and the fiber anchor that blood sugar. We want that anchor so that whatever else is coming in, it's not rising so much. So that's the way I talk about food with clients, because we all eat differently. We all have different preferences. And by the way, menopause brings on more food sensitivities too. So you might be experimenting with food, but if you're having something, and I am saying, even if you're vegan or plant-based, we have to focus on that protein also. But protein, lean meats and eggs and fish, whatever you like, and the vegetables you love, leafy greens, broccoli, cruciferous vegetables too. This is a sidebar for the vegetables. Is one of the symptoms of menopause is constipation sometimes. And that fiber really helps with that. So having all those wonderful vegetables. Another sidebar is if you happen to be postmenopausal or you've started to take bioidentical hormones, there's another situation there. We want to make sure we're eating vegetables because we got to keep those pathways clear. We don't want to have any dominance of some of those hormones. So that's how I start people out. We can nitpick on what different actual things we eat, but if you have those three pieces in it, then you get to pick and have variety and keep changing it up.
Exactly. And I like the way you explained it. So as you were talking, I put on the screen what you spoke about with insulin resistance and then talking about a balanced plate. So can you just summarize really quickly? Because I saw we had some ladies join in. So welcome to the show, you guys. And I was asking Kim about just, kind of doing a high level of what um, we should look at nutritionally. And the way she just explained it was really good. So Kim, just quickly go over the three things that you just shared, just to kind of summarize
Yes.
what we
For
should.
you that just joined, we're talking about one of the major symptoms of menopause, which is insulin resistance. So we want to have a balanced plate of anchoring that blood sugar down with our protein and our fiber. And then some carbs are fine. And we can talk about that a little bit more later, because CARB is like this 4-letter word that people are afraid of, but we actually need them too. But the anchor is really that protein and that fiber.
Exactly. And you actually had my ears perked up when you talked about plant-based protein. And for me, being a pescatarian, because I don't eat meat, and I'm not going to say was initially looking at various ways or struggling as I noticed that when my estrogen was starting to decline and the way that my body was processing food, it had become so frustrating for me. And I noticed that I had to really increase my protein intake more so than what I normally did, but also look at the vegetables, like that anchoring that you were speaking of. And that was a little frustrating for me because, when you're used to kind of, eating things a certain way and, kind of doing your workout and just doing all that. And I thought, this isn't working anymore. Like, I truly got frustrated, and I had to kind of understand and educate myself about the whole insulin resistance piece.
I love that you said this isn't working anymore.
Mhm.
And as women in our 40s and 50s and 60s, we really need to be open to the idea that things are not going to be like they used to be. And we do have to be open minded. If you are open minded, there's so many new options for us to really look at. Because again, it was so effortless when we were younger. We could just do and eat anything and get away with any kind of exercise or not exercise, and now we have to be a little more specific about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm like the first one to say, she's not
Me
kidding.
too. And I was plant-based for a long time also. I had to change, I really did have to change my thoughts on that.
Big time. And I think the biggest thing, and which is why I'm saying tonight, and what we were saying before we even went live, was that it's good that we're finally having the conversation, because I'll tell you, I was really confused, frustrated, like angry, like all of these emotions that I had gone through when I was going through this perimenopausal period and this lowering in my estrogen, because it was like pushing a rock uphill. I had no idea what was going on. And like, I just said, what was working suddenly wasn't working. And
Yeah.
I didn't know metabolically what was going on. Like I had to, kind of peel back the layers to finally get to, oh, girl, you're in perimenopause. You're
I did not know either. And as a nutritional health coach, I thought, I was pretty well versed on things. But it's funny because we were talking about, your mom, you just, the only education you got was the fanning. And
Yes.
I had heard that my grandma called it a personal summer, but my mom, yes, my mom had a hysterectomy in her 40s. So she never had menopause except for going into, I guess, kind of like a forced menopause. And I
Okay.
didn't really know, I was 20 years younger, so I didn't really know what was going on.
Mhm.
And it's funny to me because I had the same thing. I just thought I was angry. I just thought I was ragey. My poor husband thought I didn't like him. And there
Right.
were a lot of things that went down. But the biggest thing is everybody knows is when you start to gain that weight out of nowhere and you've literally been doing the exact same thing for 10 years, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden your midsection shows up, that's when we start questioning. And
Right.
finally, everybody's getting answers on that. And it's not you necessarily, you do have to change some things, but
Yes,
it's also a natural process that we are transitioning through.
absolutely. So someone commented and said, and this was back when you were talking about the sensitivities increasing, and I'm going to show it on screen. And she said, "Yep, I can no longer digest raw onions." So again,
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for putting that out there because it is true.
Mhm.
And I actually cannot have certain dairy now. And I just quit gluten just to see what would happen. And sure enough, I feel less bloated. And so if you're feeling more bloated around certain foods and you're feeling, and it could even change how your bowels are moving, it could change the
Mhm.
motility, it can change anything. If you're feeling that, then consider taking it out for a while and that'll be your answer. And then you can always add it back in later. But again, that's even a bigger answer if you've had it out for 2 to 3 weeks. Usually 21 days is a good time to take it out.
Yeah, I always say the same thing, that, try to do anything or taking out something, add, do, change, whatever habit, 21 days. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that as well. Yeah, mine was dairy too. And I was oh my goodness, I was a dairy girl for quite a while, from my early formative years on. And then, yeah, even before this, it was like, can't.
Yes. But ironically, I can have, and I've noticed some of my clients can too, I can have Greek yogurt
Hmm. Yeah.
and sometimes cottage cheese, but nothing like ice cream or milk or anything like that, which
It's,
is
it's
fine. We've got so many alternatives now.
I was getting ready to say, thank goodness for all the alternatives out there.
Yeah.
But yes. And it's so funny how you become creative with those alternatives, even if you begin to make them yourself, right? I've even resorted to making nice cream, right? Which is like fake ice cream. So like you will get, real creative with not wanting, wanting things, but not being able to have certain things that you enjoy. but you can make them tolerable and yet still palatable as well.
Yes. And I think there's something to be said for when we give these things up, instead of thinking of it as a loss,
Mhm.
instead of saying that we're letting go of this and it's a
Right,
loss, think of how they're not serving us anymore. They're just
right.
not serving us. And there's
Mhm,
other foods, there's so many foods out there that we can eat, but it's not worth not feeling good.
mhm,
We're in this like last half to third of this beautiful world and life that we're in. There's
mhm.
so many things to explore. It's not worth feeling bad
Oh,
over
no.
one
Yeah, yeah.
food.
We want to enjoy and feel, right? The joy. You can't be your best self if you're not feeling well or constantly feeling, like you said, like bloated or unable to tolerate certain things. So, welcome to the show, Cheryl, Tamika, and Lakey. So, we have a question I'm going to show on the screen from Cheryl, and it's I feel like the Mediterranean diet is going to be the answer to this weight gain.
Oh, what a great question and
Mhm.
comment. So the Mediterranean diet, it really pulls in some wonderful parts of that balanced plate. When you are eating um, fish, for example, which by the way, those omegas, we need them for so many things like our brain health right now.
Right.
And having a lot of vegetables and things like the olives and the olive oil, the healthier fats, avocado.
Right.
If that works for you, I work with people and I know, Delaney, you're the same. We work with people as individuals.
Mhm.
So, whatever works for you, but there are some overreaching themes that go across all these eating plans. And again, it's incorporating that proteins, incorporating that healthy fats, incorporating the fiber, and the Mediterranean diet definitely covers a lot of that. So if it feels good for you and you feel differences in your body while doing it and feeling better, then go for it.
I love that. Yeah. So again, how you broke down with it, the individual. So it sounds like Cheryl's already kind of been exploring that, or at least, hearing what we're saying and knowing that, trying to individually apply that to her. I always, definitely drive home the point to say, number one, track your triggers, find out what you can tolerate. What are you experiencing and where are you on your menopausal journey? Which is going to segue me into the next part about tracking triggers in food.
Yes.
All right, Cheryl. Cheryl. All right, Kim. So this particular question can be kind of convoluted. Just kind of take it with a grain of salt, maybe a grain of rice, maybe whatever. But it's about what type of foods to eat to help manage some of the menopausal symptoms. And again, that can be like this big old thing. So do your best to
Well,
really kind of be,
can I
yeah,
start with some of the things we might want to watch
right.
instead? So I'll tell you that everybody is so different, but I am such a fan, first of all, of vegetables. And we know we need the lean protein as we're getting older. We're losing 3 to 8% of our muscle mass every decade after age 30. So that's one of the reasons why we also want to have the protein in there. But vegetables, I think, again, help metabolically and they help. I think our bodies can detox very well on their own. And again, when we're having that fiber, it's so important. But I'm going to share some of the things I think are challenging for the body. And we just talked about them, but you can test them. And please remember, when I say this, you are your own person. And if you tolerate these foods, they're not causing weight gain, they're not causing bloating, they're not causing skin issues, then you can ignore the ones that you can handle. So, gluten and dairy are definitely an issue for many, many women going through menopause. So, it may be something that you want to explore in taking out. So, I know I'm doing kind of the opposite because there's so many foods left over after we do this. Some people handle caffeine differently than others going through menopause because we get very stressed out. We're already having hot flashes, anxiety, heart palpitations, brain situations. If you're going through and you know some of those symptoms that you've had, sometimes a little bit too much caffeine can increase those symptoms. We want to be careful with that. Some of the other common ones are soy, corn. We know some of the other ones. Some people, however, do really well with soy when they're going through menopause because they feel it gives them that estrogenic effect with the soy. But also, some of those soy products have the calcium. You know, we'll probably at some point talk about bone density. But the other thing, this is not a food, but considering like caffeine, how is it affecting you? And by the way, just mix it with half and half of decaf for a while and see how that works. If you love your coffee like I do, I just had to bring it down a notch because it was just making me and my clients are feeling the same way, just a little over the top. But alcohol is another one to take a look at when we are already going through these issues, and alcohol is very hard to metabolize as we get older. And just taking a look at that, and again, exploring. I am really interested in intuitive eating to a point where we also still have to have the health factors. And if you are trying to clear those metabolic pathways, alcohol makes it really hard to do that. One thing that I find that's really comforting for women who have a lot of symptoms is later in the day, having their carbs, their potatoes, their sweet potatoes, their rice. Some of them feel like they're sleeping better when they have a little bit of that at the end of the day. So some people like to watch them. That's something that is, you have to decide if that's in your eating plan or not. But when we do add them in that last meal of the day, people are getting that rise in serotonin. They're dropping the cortisol. They're feeling a little bit better. And what is a big symptom of menopause? Lack of sleep. And we want to bring that down as much as possible. So those are some of the things that I think are amazing, but it's kind of repeating what we said before. And then there's supplements. So we can talk about a little bit of that too, some of the things that you may want to include. So you can let me know if we want to go there too.
Absolutely. I was going to say, what about some supplements that women, because I get that question posed in the group quite a bit about supplementation. So can you just speak to that just a tad bit?
Absolutely. And always check with your doctor if you're not sure about taking any new supplement. But one supplement that I think covers so many things is magnesium, because we can take different forms of magnesium for whatever we need. And most of us are deficient. And I believe it's somewhere between 300 and 600 biochemical functions in our body that we need magnesium. But let's like break it down to like, this is why we need it. Again, the calming effect of magnesium, our cortisol, when we spike our cortisol, and it could just be a response to something we're feeling, it could be a response to a symptom, it could be stress. But when cortisol spikes, guess what? That blood sugar spikes also. And when cortisol is spiking, we don't want to dump those sugars right into our bloodstream because that just helps that insulin resistance even more. And we don't want that. But magnesium at night, a lot of people are taking the glycinate to go to sleep. There's so many different forms. Ask your doctor if you're not sure. Some people during the day are taking things like Calm carbonate, the magnesium carbonate, because that helps them go to the bathroom. Because again, that's another major symptom. There's also magnesium threonate, which is wonderful for the brain. We have that brain fog, and some people find that really helps with sleep also. So that's one, magnesium. We know also that we are, as a nation, vitamin D deficient. So many people come in, and I don't pretend to be a nurse like you, but I do look at their blood work because it's just fun and I get to see what's going on. I have yet to have someone come in for the first time and be in the higher end of the vitamin D3 range. Yeah, everybody's low. And I even fall behind on my supplements, and I'm usually pretty high. I live in Florida, and everybody thinks we live here, we're in the sun, we should be getting vitamin D, but it's not happening. And when you are going through menopause, when you're low in any of these key nutrients, it affects how you feel. It really does affect everything. And then, of course, keeping up with your immune system, your C and zinc and all the things, the B vitamins for energy. There's so many different things. But the ones I don't really recommend any of the ones specifically that say menopause unless I can see the labels because all these different containers have different things on
Mhm.
them. So just check
Right.
them out. Ask your doctor, ask your coach, and see if they'll help you do some research on it.
Exactly. And I like how you said, I like, and again, because we're in a very informational, I want to say jump on the bandwagon society. I do find
Mhm.
that the menopause commercials are now quite frequent, watered down, and misinformed in some
Yes.
ways. So there's a lot of stuff flooding the market whenever there's something new that's being talked about. And since we're now, really having these forward conversations about menopause. But Kim, you said something that I recommend to my clients again, which is always whenever you're, putting something in your mouth, be very aware of the source. And again, not all supplementation is of high quality. So don't just, kind of arbitrarily go and buy. Make sure that it's coming from a good quality source. And then be sure that you investigate everything that's listed on the label as well. So, with that being said, I want to segue into, and thank you for that, Kim, for the supplementation list. But part of what I know for sure that we struggle with, and you sort of mentioned this, is, and I always, I kind of not really chuckle a little bit, but I always smile because again, it's something that we hear as women, and again, this probably worked and it probably was applicable then. Is I'm gonna avoid carbs. I'm gonna leave carbs out of my diet. I'm gonna go on a carb. So just speak to that a little bit and
Oh, yes. Oh, Delayna, thank you. I appreciate it. I was that girl. I was the cardio queen. I ran 23 marathons. The only time I ate a carb was when I was going to get on the road and run 20 miles, and then I wouldn't eat carbs at all. But what I did not ever make the connection about is how did I run those miles? I needed that energy. That carb was that
exactly.
energy.
That was a carb
Yes.
fueled run, girl.
Yes, but then I wouldn't eat them, and, we've gone through these phases with these trendy diets where we pull the carbs out, and, I see women coming in and they're tired, and they're just so they're brain foggy, and we really do need one of the sources for our brain is glucose, and we really need that carb to
Mhm.
get in there, and I'm not talking like junk food carbs, I'm talking, the potatoes and the sweet potatoes and the rice and everything that we put on that plate, we can kind of portion it out.
Right.
And, you know, I'm I am an emotional eating queen. I love to talk about emotional eating. And carbs are something that we are so drawn to. And it feels so good for those reasons. It raises the serotonin. It makes us feel good. It makes us feel calmer just like any time we would emotionally eat anything. So it's just something to be aware of when you're eating it. But I have this trick for, again, the blood sugar. When you eat your protein and fiber first, then you're full and you've also anchored that blood sugar again, as we talked about. So you've only got so much room to eat the carb afterwards. Plus,
Mhm.
it's that carb's going to hitch a ride with the protein and the fiber.
Yeah.
But I cut them out for the longest time. And this is a sidebar that's not about food, but again, with us losing muscle mass so drastically as we get older, and muscle is so important. It
Mhm.
is an endocrine organ. It's not just for the musculoskeletal situation that we have and being toned and holding our bodies together. It actually helps with our hormones. So we do need all of those foods for the muscle also to keep us going.
Absolutely. See, so you can have carbs, ladies. Again, the other key word to that is quality, right? So we want complex carbs and then portion of the carbs. If you do that trick with balanced plate, and like Kim said, and she did such a great job explaining it with the protein and the fiber, and then the carbs is just kind of hitching a ride. It won't give you that quick spike in your glucose and make you insulin
Exactly.
resistant. Yeah. So the last part that I want to kind of touch on, it's really sort of well, maybe just two things. So I want to talk about our bones, right? So you talked a little bit about muscle mass, and there was a question that I think I was that I wanted to pose to you about bone health, because during
Yeah.
menopause, bone health is so important. Our bones become very brittle, dense. We're at, kind of a higher risk for ortho issues. Our bones don't heal as quickly. So, what are some key nutrients women should focus on to support our bone health as we, kind of go through this menopausal journey?
Yes, and I'm going to talk about those, but I'm going to just reiterate
Mhm.
again, like we really need to build that muscle to build that bone
Right.
density.
Mhm.
We have osteoporosis is so possible when we're not taking care of our bones, and I love it. All those ortho issues. And the other thing that's really interesting to me is, think about when we get older, like think of your parents and your grandparents. What's the one thing that happens to them that is like deadly? If they just fall and break a
Yep.
hip and end up in the hospital,
Yep.
it's done. And
Yeah.
that's why that muscle mass is so
Mhm.
important. And then again, the key nutrients. So we can add in so many wonderful things. We know. So it's funny, the calcium thing cracks me up because
Mhm.
we think we can only get calcium from dairy products. We've been taught that as we've been
Yeah.
brought up. But
Milk,
there's
milk, milk. Only drink your milk. Get your vitamin
only
D.
super milk, and the cows actually eat the grass, and it comes from the vegetables. So we have to fortify everything. So thinking about that with all your leafy greens, your omegas, your nuts, your almonds, there's so many other products, even sweet potato. We talked about the
Yeah.
carbs.
Yep.
Kefir yogurt, if you can handle dairy, kefir and yogurt are fermented. So most people who are just starting to struggle with dairy sometimes can still have the fermented dairy. Fish, sardines. I know not everybody loves sardines, but things like that. And again, those nuts and the omegas. But here are some things to avoid if you are trying to take care of your bone health. Again, alcohol is one of the things that really eats into a lot of the things that we are trying to achieve. And it's not just bone health, it's, liver health and everything, gut health.
Mhm.
So when we are taking alcohol down a notch, I'm not saying never, because again, intuitive eating, but when we bring that down, we really are helping our bones with that. When we are eating a lot of processed food and sugar, we're also putting our bone health at risk. So we think it's just about fat. We think it's just about weight gain. But at this age, we need to think about the whole system that's running. We have to think about our gut and our heart health and all the organs that are participating, our brain. And the same things that help us gain weight are the same things that are going to make these systems start to fall apart and make your menopause symptoms worse, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It's like you said, intuitively thinking about those things that impact our experience and our journey through menopause.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like thinking about it almost kind of in reverse, if you will.
Exactly. It's
Mhm.
absolutely in reverse. We're now looking at it from the inside out,
Right.
and beauty and health from the inside out. And think about aging. Like
Yeah.
when we do all of these things for our system, our aging process is so much better. We have so much more vitality. We'll have
Mhm.
that longevity, that quality of life.
Yeah.
And even drinking water, all of those things that we need to do to
Yep.
slow down that process.
There you go. See, Kim, that's how I know you're like great, because that was the last part. Remember, I said I had two things. The last part was the hydration. So speak to that just a little bit, because you already
Yeah.
just sort of stepped right into it. So
Oh, I
just
love
round
it.
us out with the hydration of it. I was going to say, how does how?
Everybody drink your water as we're talking about
Yes. Yep.
hydration. So here's the thing. Hydration is literally one of the easiest, overlooked, hardest things for people to do, even though it's the free thing that we think we can do. And we really have to think about it, because when we are hungry, we get hunger cues. Our ghrelin jumps in, that hunger hormone, and jumps in. When we're thirsty, until we get really thirsty and dry in the mouth, we are actually dehydrated sometimes and we don't know it. Your body is tapping you on the shoulder saying, I'm thirsty, but you don't know that. It doesn't know how to say it. It doesn't have a language to tell you. So you might turn to sugar or
Mhm.
caffeine or something to make yourself feel better when in actuality you're dehydrated. The slightest amount of dehydration on your body puts a stress on your body and raises cortisol. So cortisol, insulin, like it all goes together. So we
We're right
really,
back in that cycle, right? We're
yes,
back in that cycle.
everything again, it works together. And then the hydration also, this is the funniest thing. I just read this somewhere and it makes so much sense. Not hydrating and having that half your body weight in ounces of water every day or more is one of the fastest ways to age your skin too.
Mhm.
So if you want to look glowing and you want to feel glowing and your cells are full of that water,
Yeah.
then
Drink
that's a
up.
good feeling. Yes, I think I'm going to too.
Drink up. Let's show them, Kim. Drink up.
Drink it up. And it's
Drink
so
up.
good. But here's a little sidebar to that too. Sometimes there are people who drink a lot of water and they're doing such a great job. And again, this is something to talk to your doctor about. But I am finding that with my clients who are also taking electrolytes, they're feeling even better because they're getting their magnesium, potassium, and sodium in. Again, you have to talk to a doctor if you're concerned at all about hypertension or anything like that.
Right.
But many of my clients come in with their blood work and they're actually low in electrolytes. So they're drinking enough water, but they're not absorbing it. It's just going right through them.
And
They go
right
into
out.
the bathroom, it's going right out. But that hydration, again, I go back to emotional eating too. When you are not hydrating, you may think you're hungry when you're not really hungry. And
Right.
another little tip is not to drink your water with your meal. Let your digestive juices do their job and have very little sips so it doesn't wash through and get your stomach upset. Have your water before you eat and then give yourself some time after you eat so that your digestive process can take care of your food.
Absolutely. You know, that also was something that I really didn't realize as well. Again, until later in life, it was always, eat, drink. So, again, when you're looking at processing and how your body metabolizes food, your gut health, then you kind of know these, I shouldn't call them tricks, but better ways to
Yes.
experience food. Yeah.
And it's okay to call them hacks because life
Hacks.
is a hack. I mean, we really do need to like put all these little things together to
Mhm.
make our habits and our lifestyle click. We have to try these things that might work for us. And I do think that the best thing for many people when they first wake up, especially if you take medication, for example, even though I'm trying to do all the right things, through perimenopause, got kicked into hypothyroidism. So the first thing I have to do in the morning is take my medication. And so I take a glass of water, I have it ready to go next to my medication. And the first thing I do is drink this before. So I front load with 16 ounces of water before I even have coffee. Every cup of coffee I have, I try to make sure I'm having 8 ounces of water after
All
that.
right. Yeah.
Yes, and then we get talking like this. I don't know, Delaney, you have to tell me if you do this too. When you get talking throughout the day, though, that's when it's a challenge, and we have to come up with little hacks and have that water sitting there.
That is my biggest struggle now. And I was speaking to one of my girlfriends probably a week or so ago. And I said, I have got to put my own self on a water challenge. Like this is like I've noticed probably um in the last 6 months, I would have to say, if I had to put a time frame on it, that I'm struggling with getting my water in. And I kind of do the same thing like you do, which is have it next to my bed so that in the morning it's like it's a no-brainer. You just start to, kind of drink. It's at room temperature and I do that whole deal. However, throughout the day, I'm finding that it used to be where I just like, chug my water, have my water bottle. Now it's like it just drags around with me and I'm not really, doing what I should be doing and having the water on board. And it's so important. And I really felt like ending our discussion and really talking about the hydration. I had to do what I tell my clients to do. What is one of the things that you struggle with, right? It's what are that thing that you know that you need to improve upon. And so I just started to um, write down like how much water am I drinking? Why am I not drinking water? What am I doing instead of drinking water? So it was really just being mindful like you said, your emotional eating queen. What am I doing instead of, hydrating myself, because it's so very important. So I have gotten better. There's room for improvement, but again, there's room for
I love that. I think that's the fact that you wrote that down, the fact that you reflected on why it's not happening. That
improvement.
is wonderful because then you can actually solve the problem. Because when we go into health habits and just say we're just going to do it, but we don't know why it's not happening, then, I think that's really challenging. So when we figure out, I absolutely love that. When you figure out why you're not following through, then we can take the steps to change that because it's usually simple things. For me, even driving, I keep a bottle of water in the car and I drink it every stoplight because I know that I'm letting it go. And I do track it. I have an app and I put it in my phone, and it's so disappointing in the evening and I'm only 60% because we know what happens when we drink too much water before bed to try to catch up. So I love that. That was good.
Exactly. Yep. Challenge myself. And you know how it is when you're challenged and you look at it and you're like, I'm only at 60%. I'm not a 60% girl.
Yes.
Like, what's going on? What
I'm
is all that,
competitive with
right?
myself.
Exactly. It's me versus me for that.
Exactly.
Exactly. So again, thank you ladies for joining us. We are wrapping up here talking with Kim Hynes of Kim Hynes Health. Make sure that you follow her on all social media at Kim Hynes Health. We're talking about savoring midlife, healthy eating through menopause. And she has given us from the very beginning up until the end of tonight's Menopause Mixer some amazing, I'm going to call them health hacks. So make sure that if you're just joining, that you go back and watch the beginning of tonight's Menopause Mixer and put hashtag replay. If you have specific questions, even though the show is ending, we will go back, and if there's specific questions, I'll make sure that I punt them over to Kim and have her answer those for you. So tonight has been absolutely amazing. Lisa, Emily, LaShonda, Dawn, Tracy, Kat, Demetrius, thank you guys for joining us. Kristen and Diva, you guys joined in at an amazing time. From the top of tonight's show all the way to the bottom of tonight's episode, Kim has been dropping, again, those health hacks and those nuggets. We've talked about um, having a balanced plate, what is important to get in our macronutrients and how to eat them, insulin resistance, how to make your diet colorful, eating to manage your symptoms. What else did we cover, Kim?
Bone density,
Yes, bone density. You heard the hydration part.
hydration.
Yes. So it's everything that you need to savor midlife. So, Kim, I'm going to spotlight you and I want you to kind of just close us out with anything encouraging, specific. And then I'm going to put your contact information on the screen so that whoever is joining us, regardless if you've been here from the beginning or you're just joining, that you can then follow Kim.
Well, first of all, thank you for those of you who are listening in, and thank you if you're on the replay also. It is a very crazy transitional time to go through menopause, but it is so doable. And you have a support system, and everything that you do with your body right now, you have the choice and you're empowered, and you're going to be amazing. So just remember to nourish your entire life because everything you consume, not just the food, but everything you consume is really important right now. And you want to make your body feel safe. And that's why we do need to eat. We need to eat a balanced plate. And you do need to add in food and not over restrict so that your body feels good and safe and peaceful during this menopausal transition. And thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. See, I couldn't have ended it better. Thank you so much. Again, I appreciate you. Your information is scrolling on the ticker for tonight. Again, at Kim Hynes Health on social media, and then kimhineshealth.com. If you missed any portion of tonight's Menopause Mixer, it will reload, play it from the top. Any questions you have, if you didn't get an opportunity to ask during tonight's show, please make sure you just comment and we will see them and I will punt them over to Kim, who will be happy to answer them for you. So thank you. And I'll see you again next week for our Menopause Mixer.